Okay, good afternoon, viewers and colleagues. I am Dr. Favour Nzeakor. I am making this presentation together with the Prof. Godfrey Thenga. So it's titled Weak Protocol Theory, a socio-structural framework for understanding corruption in African institutions. So let's create the background or the problem that warrants the research in the first instance. Okay, from a review of other crime and corruption-related literatures, we discovered that most of traditional criminologies theories center on individual person problem, but we are now shifting away, looking at emphasizing institution, protocol. But in so doing, they undermine the role of institution and protocols. So what we are presenting here is the theory I founded in 2021, and it's called weak protocol theory. And it ties corruption to the rules, the weak rules and available resources. So the methodology we are using, we use secondary data centering on qualitative document analysis, policy reviews, and literature synthesis. So we find it. So this is just in a nutshell what we are going to meet. We're going to discuss it in detail. So we offer a robust diagnostic lens for institutional fragility and governance reforms. Implication is also is there policy design, rule standardization, reduced discretionary power, and digitalization. So now the gap and the rationale behind the studies. So first of all, the gaps in person centered theories. So others add in-person theories like rational choice theories, differential association theories, and there is gap. They're centered on the human personal idiosyncrasy rather than on institutional structure and mechanism. So they lack contextual specificity and empirical testability in African governance structure and institutional structure. So what we're presenting is more or less centered on Africa institutional. So rationale for weak protocol theory, it promises to explain how vague, weak, and manipulable rules co-occur with resource assets to produce corruption. Now, our objective is to critically evaluate which weak protocol theory as a socio-structural framework for corruption in African public institutions, in other words, in African settings. So we have research questions, 5 of them. So without much wasting time, move to the core proposition of the theory. So now, like I said before, I propounded this theory in 2021. So this is a kind of review of that theory. Yes, so we have a kind of a schema that weak rules, when it coincide with available resources, whether more in terms of money, in terms of power, in terms of privilege, so corruption will be inevitable. I say it again, weak rules plus available resources equals to corruption. So key characteristics of weak protocols. So we have indicators of these weak protocols. First of all, we have vagueness or imprecision in rules or protocols. So we have weak checks and balances. We have discretionary power. We have limited stakeholder participation. we have manipulatable and exploitability, we have socioeconomic political influence. So the position of this theory in a nutshell, it says that it's a middle range theory, bridging abstract sociology and practical institutional analysis. So it's a middle range theory, it's not a meta framework that wants to explain every other phenomena available, social phenomena, but it just is a middle range theory. It positions to explain corruption from African South African context. So this is core assumption, the core assumption of the theory. So mechanism. So from this schema, so you see that we have weak rules from the left hand side. So when it coincides with available resources, so corruption will be inevitable. Corruption either in form of fraud, form of bribery, in form of just using public positions and authority and resources for personal gain. So what do I mean by this? When I say weak rules, I'm saying vague regulations, unchecked discretions, low accountability, easily manipulatable rules. So this is creating a loopholes and bias. So when it coincides with resources in terms of motivation opportunities, so the available resources create an opportunity and motivation. So the corruption becomes inevitable. So we move on to why is it relevant in African context? Okay, yes, ambiguity in regulation. Most of African countries, you see there is a lot of ambiguity in regulations, in protocols. For instance, in Nigeria, for instance, you see a number of institutions competing for a particular policing role. We'll have road safety doing policing job. We'll have Nigeria police doing policing job. We'll have a civil defense corps doing the policing job. So at the end of the day, there is ambiguity, there is irregularity, there is confusion. So these confusions and irregularity metamorphose into corruption, bribery, and what have you. So then again, alignment, you see procurement issues in procurement, electoral management, crisis responses. In South Africa, for the last 3 months, we have a commission of inquiries. We have Madlanga commissions looking into the excesses and graft in policing institution. We see a lot of corruptions in procurement, in criminal justice process, in arrest, or what have you. So it has opened a cankerworm of the rot and the mismanagement in most of institutions in Africa. Again, in crisis management or responses, currently Nigeria as a case study is battling cases of kidnapping, what is it called, terrorism. So, and at the end of the day, for instance, what happened like last month or last 2 months, you find out that there was the intelligence that terrorists are coming to kidnap a whole school children, and a military formation acted on that intelligence. So they went to that location, that school. Before few minutes or few hours, so the terrorists coming, a call came from another authority asking the soldiers on duty to leave the scene. So after leaving the scene, the terrorists came and perpetrated their heinous activities. So question has been, and nobody has been able to answer that question, who who informed or phoned the soldiers on duty to leave the scene before the terrorists came? So you see that this is why this theory and this framework is particularly um, practical relevance in African setting. Now, we have methodology, like I said before. We have data sources. We collected most of our data from secondary sources, uh, qualitative quantitative analysis of institutional documents, governance protocols, and literature. We also got our primary data came from institutional policies, governance protocol, anti-corruption frameworks. We also have our secondary data from peer review articles, reports, corruption indices. So we did a coding. That coding, we use those indicators of weak rules, like lack of rule clarity, lack of enforcement, and enlarged discretion at the disposal of a given officer. So we use it to code this in. So validity, we have triangulation, audit trail, or peer review sources. Now, talking about indicators of weak protocol theories, we we put it in a tabular form so that for better understanding, we have indicators, strong protocols. Remember, we said that weak protocols, when it converges with available resources, we produce corruption. So we are now looking at those indicators of strong versus weak protocol. So we're saying for strong protocol for a given institution, there must be rule clarity, precision in rule, and the 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 other side of it, the flip side of it is rule vagueness, ambiguity, unclear wording, overlapping mandate, loopholes. So the next one is enforcement strength. So for a rule to be strong, there must be willpower and available resources to enforce. But the other flip side, you have enforcement weaknesses, inconsistencies, sanction. For instance, let me take an institution in Nigeria, for instance, the electoral umpire, the regulatory agency for election, they call them Independent National Electoral Commission. So they have, the constitution has asked them to prosecute every electoral malpractices and illegal activities. But at the end of the day, they said they don't have the money, they don't have what it takes, that they will recommend to the other institution executive to do that. At the end of the day, you have people flouting these rules at will without any consequence. And when people see that there's no consequence for their illegal activity, they will go haywire in doing more, committing more. So this is it. So we will not waste much time, but just enumerating the what we call, if time permits, we can revisit these indicators of weak protocols. So look at our findings and the strength and limitations. Now, we found that one of the strengths of the study is a structural focus on institutional fragility. We are looking away beyond what other theories and other framework stated, um, like control theories, like a differential association theories that emphasize individual idiosyncrasies, weakness, moral weaknesses, ethical weaknesses of individual persons. So we are shifting from individual person-centered weaknesses to institutional weaknesses. So we are no longer interested from this standpoint of this story in individual weakness. We're looking at the codes, structural weakness that give rise to corruption. So that is the first strength. Then we also another strength of the research is that contextual relevance for African governance. Africa is battling with rule ambiguity, a lot of issues with the institutions, and it's manifesting from every part of the continent. So we are trying to tailor is we are looking at assuming that most African institutions have weakness in their rules and their codes. So because of that, the context breeds opportunity for corruption. That's what we are trying to pass through. So the next strength of the research and the theory is policy utility for reform and all this. So the theory we are revealing provides actionable indicators for institutional review and anti-corruption reforms. So finally, on the strength, it integrates opportunity and motivation via rules and resources. It bridges structural loophole with resources-driven incentive. So on the flip side of the limitations, yes, a limited behavioral insight integration. So it didn't capture very well the individual weaknesses that will kind of will work or strengthen the institutional limitation. For instance, yes, we are looking at improving on it in the next in future improvement and review of the studies, where we are going to look at how individual weakness will integrate or work, we reinforce institutional weaknesses. Then we also see another limitation in ambiguity in defining the word, the concept weakness. So it lacks a bit precise operationalization. Yes, making measurement very difficult. So we are also working on concretizing such concept, making it researchable, making it measurable. So again, another major weakness is cultural adaptability consideration. It may not easily translate across diverse cultural or governance contexts. So we are currently working on a systematic review to look at if it can traverse other continents, especially global north, so that we can make it we can be able to generalize it globally. So we are also looking at insights. Yes, we're looking at practicability insights. Is it really practicable? Is there any instances in Africa where we can reform, where we can practice, where we can apply this? Yes, there are. So we have rule standardization and clarity across procurement, recruitment, budgeting. So this is called for implication for reform and policy. So if we look at the core assumption of the theory, we can bring it to bear in reforming cross procurement, recruitment, budgeting. So it also gives us the leeway to limit discretionary power via automation, multi-signature approval, strengthening oversight, real-time monitoring, independent review, and audit trails. For instance, of recent, the National Assembly of Nigeria passed the current electoral law or reforms. So in that, one of the issues, very debatable issue, is issue of real-time transmission of electoral results. So why the elite, the power that be, favored manual transmission? Majority of the people are saying, please, let there be really time monitoring really time transmission of electoral results. But at the end of the day, because we are suffering what we call elite capturing, so most of the elites are united in this because they want to rig themselves. Some of them have said that four tenors, the current president, whether he knows what he's doing or he doesn't know what he's doing, he wants to perpetuate himself. And because of that, they want to force that unpopular law to the populace. So, but this story is saying us if we can go for real-time monitoring, the electoral process will be more acceptable. Yes. So leveraging on this theory also, we are looking at digital governance tools, e-procurement, integrated financial systems. So these are call for policy and reform in most of African institutions. The next thing is stakeholder participation and ethics training programs. It's also the area of reform and policy implication. So we're also looking at integrate behavioral and cultural dimension for sustainability. So these are all key areas that are calling for reforms based on the findings of the review of the theory. Now, for future empirical validation, because one of the weaknesses of our theory of the weak protocol theory is that it lacks a very solid empirical validation. So that's the first we are. Theories, you keep on building it. So we are looking at multi-sector institutional audits, whether municipality, police, universities, health sector. So we are looking at that realm, multi-sector institutional audits. So we are looking also at case studies. So this is what we have designed in the next level of the theory popularization. So we are looking at case studies of procurement, elections, services delivering. We're also looking at surveying officials, stakeholder, looking at the rules, clarity, enforcement, discretion. So we're also looking at designing a document-based analysis that call reactive and non-reactive research methodology. So looking at, we want to do a triangulation where we want to use a non-reactive method to counter the excessive of reactive methods. So we're looking at that triangulation, picking up documentary data, secondary data, using it to cross-check the primary one. Yes. So we also are designing a comparative sectoral studies where we design where we look at a policing system in South Africa. We want to compare it with policing system in Nigeria, taking the core assumption of the theory. So to make it more, to popularize it, we can even do it between global North and global South. Yeah, that's the level we are looking at. So the next level we are looking at for future studies, we are looking at statistical modeling, where we use regulation to link protocol strength with corruption indices. So finally, on our table, item where what we atomize for future popularization of the theory, we are looking at cross-national comparisons with cultural legal controls, cross-national comparison. Yes. Now, in conclusion and contributions, so the major takeaway from this theory is that weak protocol theory provides a robust socio-structural lens for corruption in African soil, in African context. So it shifts focus from personal ethics, personal idiosyncrasy, to institutional designs, weak rules, enforcement weakness, then reducing discretion. So that is a major contribution of this theory. So it supports practical governance reforms, especially through digitization and standardized protocols. So it's also supporting it, practical governance reforms and policy implications. Yeah, we also lay groundwork for empirical validation via audits, case studies, survey, cross-national analysis. So we are not resting on our ORs. We are still building this theory to make it a worldwide, global explanatory schema. So finally, our major takeaway for today as I round off, weak rules, remember again, plus when it converges with available resources, corruption is inevitable. So that's what we are saying. So why strong protocols and digital governance reduce opportunity for corruption, especially in African context? Weak rules encourages plus available resources encourages corruption. So we call the audience, we call participants to action. We are inviting everybody, colleagues, to consider weak protocol indicators in their own audits. Look at where you are, look at the organization you're working, look at for weak protocols, and look at how it rub off on corruption tendencies. This is why it is assumed that corruption is higher, tendency to be corrupt is higher in public institutions when you just oppose it with a private institution. What is the underlying factor? The underlying factor is that private institutions tend to have a digitalized rules, and they don't give much allowance for discretion. Everything is streamlined. So that is the divide line why corruption is more visible in public-owned institutions than privately owned institutions. Yeah, so I will pack it here and give room for questions, contributions, and what have you. So remember again that our major schema is that if weak rules or weak protocols converge with available resources, either the resources in terms of money, power, privilege, or what have you, the ability to fire and hire, once they converge, then the resultant effect is corruption. It promotes corruption. Yes, and remember again that we are saying that Africa is rife with weak rules in their institutions. There is a fertile ground for weak rules and weak rules and weak institutions. And that's why you have avalanche of corruptions every day in, every day out. So this is what we are presenting to the academic world. We are not yet there. We are still working. It's a work in progress. We are working to make it, to popularize it, and test it across culture, across institutions, across jurisdictions, and also take it to global south and global north, so that we look at how we can begin to reform, how we can begin to restructure our institutions, our rules, to make sure that it's not a fertile ground for corruption. Thank you very much, and God bless you.